Evolutionary biology is the study of history of life forms on Earth. What exactly is evolution? To understand the changes in flora and fauna that have occurred over millions of years on Earth, we must have an understanding of the content of the origin of life, that is, evolution of Earth, of stars, and of the universe itself. What follows is the longest of all the constructed and conjectured stories. This is the story of the origin of life and evolution of life forms or biodiversity on planet Earth in the content of evolution of Earth and against the background of evolution of universe itself. Topics to be covered in this chapter is the origin of life, biological evolution and evidences for biological evolution, paleontology, comparative anatomy, embryology and molecular evidences. We'll be studying about Darwin's contribution, modern synthetic theory of evolution, mechanism of evolution, variations and natural selection with examples, gene flow and genetic drift, and we'll also talk about Hardy-Weinberg's principle, adaptive radiation and human evolution. Origin of life. When we look at the stars on a clear night sky, we are in a way looking back in time. Stellar distances are measured in light years, and what we see today is an object whose emitted light started its journey millions of years back and from trillions of kilometers away and reaching our eyes now. However, when we see objects in our immediate surroundings, we see them instantly, and hence in the present time, therefore, when we see stars, we apparently are peeping into the past. The origin of life is considered a unique event in the history of universe. The universe is vast. The earth itself is almost only a speck, and the universe is very old, about 20 billion years old. Huge galaxies, a cluster of galaxies, they comprise the universe, and galaxies contain stars and clouds of gas and dust. Considering the size of universe, earth is indeed a speck, and the Big Bang theory The Big Bang theory attempts to explain to us the origin of universe. It talks of a singular huge explosion unimaginable in physical terms, and the universe expanded, and hence the temperature came down, hydrogen and helium formed. When hydrogen and helium formed sometimes later, and the gases condensed under gravitation and formed the galaxies of the present day universe. So in the solar system or the Milky Way, when the solar system or the Milky Way galaxy, Earth was supposed to have been formed about 4.5 billion years back. There was no atmosphere on early Earth, and water vapors, methane, carbon dioxide and ammonia, they are released from the molten mass that covered the surface. The ultraviolet rays from the sun broke up water into hydrogen and helium, hydrogen and oxygen, and and the lighter hydrogen that escaped. Oxygen combined with ammonia and methane to form water, carbon dioxide and other gases. So the ozone layer was formed, and as it cooled, the water vapors fell as rain to fill the depressions and form oceans, and life appeared about 500 million years after the formation of the earth, that is almost about 4 billion years back. Now, did life come from the outer space? Some scientists they believe that it came from outside. Early Greek thinkers thought units of life called spores They were transferred to different planets, including Earth. Panspermia is still a favorite idea for sperm for some of the astronomers, and for a long time it was also believed that the life came out of decaying and rotting matter like straw, mud, etc. And this was the theory of spontaneous generation. Louis Pasteur, the picture you can see, the Louis Pasteur, he actually believed, by careful experimentation he demonstrated actually that life comes only from the pre-existing life. He showed that the pre-sterilized flask life did not come from killed yeast, while in another flask he has, let's just see the experiment of Louis Pasteur first. Like here you can see in the flask open to air where the growth of microbes, and in the another flask he can see the killed yeast. He showed that in the pre-sterilized flask life did come from killed yeast, while in another flask open to air new living organisms, they arose from the killed yeast. Spontaneous generation theory was dismissed once and for all. However, this did not answer how the first life came on Earth. Oparin of Russia and Haldane of England, they proposed that the first form of life could have come from the pre-existing non-living organic molecules. That could be RNA, protein, etc., and that the formation of life was preceded by chemical evolution, that is, formation of diverse organic molecules from inorganic constituents. And the conditions on the earth were like high temperature, volcanic storms, reducing atmosphere containing methane, ammonia, etc. In 1953, S.L. Miller, an American scientist, they created similar conditions in a lab. He created electrical discharge in a closed flask that contains ammonia, hydrogen, methane, and water vapors at 800 degrees Celsius. He observed the formation of amino acids. They observed the formation of amino acids, and in similar experiments others observed the formation of sugars, nitrogen bases, pigments, and fats. So analysis of meteorite content also revealed the similar compounds, which indicates that similar processes are occurring elsewhere in space. So with this limited evidence, the first part of this story, that is chemical evolution, was more or less accepted. So this was the experimental setup where they have used the electrical sparks and ammonia, methane, water vapors, and hydrogen. And after a week they were able to see the organic molecules, amino acids, nucleotides, aldehydes, hydroxy acids, nucleic acids in this sample, which is collected and analyzed later on. So the chemical evolution, this is the more or less accepted theory till now. Now we have no idea about how the first self-replicating metabolic capsules of life they arose. The first non-cellular forms of life could have originated 3 billion years back, and they would have been giant molecules like RNA, proteins, polysaccharides, etc. And these capsules, they reproduce their molecules. Perhaps the first cellular forms of life did not possibly originate till 2000 million years ago. These were probably single cells, and all life forms were in the water environment only, and this version of biogenesis, that is the first form of life, arose slowly through evolutionary forces from non-living molecules is accepted by majority. But once formed, how the first cellular forms of life could have evolved into the complex biodiversity of today is a fascinating story that will be discussed now. Now, conventional religious literature tells us about the theory of special creation. This theory has three connotations. One, that all living organisms or species that we see today were created as such. And second is that the diversity was always the same since creation and will be the same in future also. And third, that the earth is about 4,000 years. All these ideas were strongly challenged during the 19th century, and based on the observations made during a sea voyage in a sail ship called HMS Beagle, he around the world, Charles Darwin, he concluded that the existing life forms shared similarities to varying degrees, not only among themselves but also with the life forms that existed millions of years ago. Many such life forms do not exist anymore. So there had been extinctions of different forms of life which are gone, years gone by, and the life arose at different periods of history of Earth, and there has been gradual evolution of life forms. So any population has built-in variations in characteristics, and those characteristics were enabled by some of the survive better with the natural conditions, climate, food, physical factors, etc., and they are less survived under such natural conditions. Another word used is the fitness of the individual of the population. Fitness, according to Darwin, refers to the reproductive fitness, and those who are better fit in the environment, they leave more progeny than others, and those will survive more, or and they are selected by nature, and thus he called it as natural selection, and he has explained the mechanism of evolution. Alfred Wallace, a naturalist who worked in Malay archipelago, had also come to the similar conclusions around the same time. So, new types of organisms, they are recognizable, and all existing life forms share similarities and share common ancestors. But these ancestors were present at different periods of the history of the earth, and the geological history of earth closely correlates with the biological history of earth, and the common conclusion is that earth is very old, not thousands of years as we thought earlier, but billions of years old.